The Navy's first ace was Naval Aviator number 85, David Ingalls, in 1918. Flying a British Sopwith Camel for the RAF, he shot down 5 German airplanes in 6 weeks.
Good morning again. We have the Bearcat and the Hellcat here. Bearcat there, Hellcat here. Let's get these gentlemen seated down here. Here we have Rob Collins. He's with the Collins Group. But we just start off, tell us a little bit about your museum or your foundation.
The Collins Foundation was started back in 1977 to preserve living history events. It wasn't designed to have aircraft initially. It was based around transportation events and cars. And that all changed in the mid-1980s because of events like OSHKOSH and the CAF airshow, going there and seeing these aircraft and wanting to preserve the history. Since 1989, we've had the Wings of Freedom tour, the B-17 Flying Fortress, B-24 Liberator, and later a Mustang, a Mitchell, and this year a P-40 Warhawk that tour around the country. And we've been to over 3,400 different tour locations in the last 30 years, bringing these aircraft to the public. But a lot of what we do is around these other airplanes. From World War I aircraft up to the Vietnam era, we have a core collection of very historic airplanes that are not on tour all the time, like this Hellcat, which we are sharing with you today.
Okay, now, next over here we have our, actually Stu's a little fill-in. And then we have Warren Peach over here. Warren, his airplane is down. They've got a maintenance problem, but he's here to represent that particular airplane. We got to talk to Warren and Ron here.
All right, Sam.
Go ahead.
My name's Warren Peach. I'm with the Dakota Territory Air Museum, and I brought Stu Dawson in here to fill in for me because, as Sam was just saying, our airplane didn't make it here today because of maintenance issues, and I'm sure you'll all understand that. Tom Woods is generous enough to bring his Bearcat over here, so we've got one to look at anyway, and we sure appreciate that. I personally haven't flown a Bearcat. Stu test flew our airplane before it had the maintenance issue, and so
That's why we have Stu here.
that's exactly right. Yeah, I can talk about the museum and other airplanes, but certainly not very smart about a Bearcat. Dakota Territory Air Museum works in conjunction with Mr. Bruce Ames, who's here in the audience today with us, and he's the guy that sponsored the Bearcat and some of the other airplanes you'll see here, the Spitfire and Globe's Hope, the Mustang. The museum in Minot, North Dakota has been there for 33 years now. We're about 55 airplanes. We've got about a dozen World War II aircraft that we fly out of there, and they fly on a fairly regular basis, do some air shows and some demonstrations and a lot of veteran work and educational programs. The Bearcat that we're working on is being done down in Breckenridge, Texas by Ezel Aviation. The airplane was purchased from Mr. Dusty Dowd, who collected up parts for 3 Bearcats over a 32-year period and is still involved in helping us finish that airplane. Really happy to be here. Glad to see a good crowd like this, and hopefully we'll answer some questions.
Rob, tell us a little bit about the Hellcat. What was it designed for? Did it fill its mission?
Did the Hellcat fill its mission? Yeah, I would say so. The Hellcat was designed to be an air superiority fighter in the Pacific, carrier-based. It was designed to destroy the Japanese Zero, which was kind of wreaking havoc with us earlier in the war. So the first mission flown by a Hellcat was September of 1943, and they used until the end of the war, and in total they had about 5,200 victories for the loss of 270 Hellcats in air-to-air combat. And that was a 19-to-1 kill-to-loss ratio. That's the best ever for any piston-powered fighter, and a record that stood until the F-15. 300 plus aces were made in Hellcats, and to put in perspective what 5,200 victories is like, the Mustang didn't even break 5,000 in Europe, and you think of the number of P-51s that were there. So this is arguably, it's definitely the greatest naval fighter of all time. Historically, I would say one of the top 2 airplanes in the Pacific for the reasons we won the war. Without it, Without the SBD or Hellcat, I don't think we would have won the war in the Pacific. And they built over 12,000 of these. And that's a pretty remarkable number considering the shorter time period that they had, just about 2 years of production. And that was only one factory doing that. When you look at other aircraft production, you know, as impressive as the B-24 production was at 18,000, that was spread over 4 factories. But this was just the Grumman factory churning out these aircraft. And that's a remarkable feat.
What horsepower? Give us a little specs on this thing, horsepower and armament.
The Hellcat's got the Pratt & Whitney 2800 on it. It's got a 2-stage blower, about 2,000 horsepower. It's not necessarily a fast airplane. The Corsair is a lot faster, Mustang's a lot faster, a lot of airplanes are quicker, but it climbs very well and it turns exceptionally well. And the air war in the Pacific was different than Europe, and it was built for that air war.
What horsepower does it have there? 12?
2,000.
2,000. Okay, but how about the armament? What armament does it have on it?
Hellcat was equipped with 650 caliber machine guns. And that's the way it remained throughout the war. You look at the Dash 3 and the Dash 5, there were very little changes to the airplane throughout its production run.
Well, now you've flown it a good bit. How does it fly compared to the other Warbirds?
It's a beautiful flying airplane. Don't tell keep your ears closed. It's so easy to fly. And that was really one of its greatest traits is stability. You made an airplane, Grumman built an airplane that was easy for that 20, 21-year-old kid to fly, because now he's going to fly it on and off of an aircraft carrier. It's a great gun platform, and you could see why this airplane made a lot of aces.
Does it have any quirks when you fly it at all?
I wouldn't say any quirks. I mean, it's very Grumman. When you're in the airplane, kind of feels like a TBM or Wildcat right in between. It's just kind of a Grumman feel to it. Every airplane has their quirks, but there's really no bad habits it has. You can pull on this airplane and it's docile in the stall. Again, great for the fighter pilot. You don't want to make the airplane so tough where it's going to kill the pilot before he gets into combat.
Right.
And there was a lot of airplanes like that. There were really great fighter planes once the pilot learned how to fly. The reason why the Hellcat had such a great kill-to-loss ratio in the Pacific, one reason, was the Corsair came in late. Corsair's a great airplane, but it was just a little too tricky on the carriers. They didn't put it out there. It's, why bother? We have this thing. It's a killer. 19-1. How do you beat it?
Not very well.
Not very well.
Stu, tell us a little bit. Stu is a retired. Give it to Stu. Oh, he's got one. Oh, he's got his on his head. Look at that. Look at that. Chris, you look real important. Stu Dawson is a retired airline pilot for Southwest. He's an FAA examiner on numerous airplanes, Warbirds, and he's flown numerous Warbirds. I'm not going to even get to the point. I don't think I can read them all. And he's with Lewis Air Legends. You want to tell us a little bit about Lewis Air Legends before we start talking about the Bearcat?
Well, Rod Lewis started really collecting about 15 years ago, and he's kept at it, and he's built up quite a collection of aircraft, and he's really dedicated to it. We've got one of his here, and
go ahead and mention it.
uh
Go ahead and mention it. Tell us what it is.
the Mosquito.
And that'll be here Friday at 2 o'clock, folks. So
But-
please come back.
He's a very avid fan of the Bearcats. He's got 4 of those, and he's got a Dash 1 and 2 Dash 2s and well, if you call it a Bearcat, he's got Rare Bear.
Is this the Dash 1 in Bear? By the way, Stu is the pilot for Rare Bear.
This the aircraft that they have is a Dash 1. This is a Dash 2. There's
Okay.
a few little differences.
Okay. Very little difference.
Very little difference. The tail's a little taller. I think with the Dash 1 they found out they needed a little bit more tail because it kind of sits there
Right.
and fishtails a little bit. But
Okay, now what was the design mission of this? To replace this airplane?
no, this thing's more of an interceptor than a fighter. I mean, it's got real good performance. It won't turn with this one as hard. but it'll climb 6,000 feet a minute. And if that's what it was used for, it was get up there, shoot, get out. It only carried about 230 gallons worth of fuel, so you weren't going very far. But it's a real high performance airplane. It's a great airplane.
What power plant do you have in it?
These had 2800s like this, except they're a little bit later model engine. There were 30W in there, 2250 horsepower.
Now, did this see service in World War II?
Yeah, but it was late. It was late.
Very late?
Very late, but it did.
Mostly Korea, right?
Yeah, it was a hot rod. It was the best that they had back then. The only other airplane that'll kind of keep up with this is a Sea Fury.
Okay. How about a little bit about the specs, about the how much ammo it carried, whatever, and where it carried?
The airplane weighed gross 13,000 pounds. That's what they grossed it at. It's got a 35-foot wingspan on it, and it's a great airplane to fly. It likes the 3-point position. It's very stable. It's a real easy airplane to fly. I think the Hellcat's a little bit more. It's a little tamer than this thing, but it's the performance of this thing is just, it just makes you smile.
Now, was this all in the Pacific that they flew this? What little they flew it in?
I don't know exactly where they had it. I'm not the one for the historian. This guy right here can help you out.
Yeah, what's your paint job supposed to represent?
Well, we left it in a bad neighborhood. People started writing on it, it appears. I know who did part of it, but it's delivery paint scheme. This is the way it rolled off the assembly line. So that 476 you see on the nose that was spray painted on there, that's the last 3 digits of the bureau number.
Okay.
And that way they could just look out on the flight line really quick and see that. And then on the prop you'll see it says gas okay, and when the pilot went out to do a test flight, they knew the gas was okay and Tom's gonna go fly it.
Okay. How about the color scheme of this one over here? Do you guys know?
That's typical Navy color scheme. They painted them all like that.
How about your airplane that you've got at home now that doesn't fly, by the way?
Yeah, thanks. Keep rubbing that in. I really appreciate it. It's dark blue like this in the common deal. It's got a big B on the tail because it flew off of the aircraft carrier Boxer, and we have a nice series of pictures of the airplane both launching and trapping on the carrier and stuff. And so it has some military history and some, it served, and so it was painted up to represent what it was when it flew with the Navy.
How long did it take you guys to do your restoration, and what's its history?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Dusty Dowd started collecting parts for Bearcats 32 years ago, I believe now, or maybe even more than that, if you include the restoration. And Bob Odegaard and Dusty and Jerry Beck and I were all talking about things at one point in time, and over the years it ended up that Dusty kind of realized that it was probably a bigger project than he was going to get done, so he agreed to sell the collection to Bruce Ames, and Bruce contracted with Ezel Aviation to restore the airplane. It was a really complete set of airplanes. Great collection of not just parts but also complete aircraft. It had various sorts of damage. One of them had landed short of a runway and flipped on its back, and that's the airplane that we're restoring right now. And this will, it still went all the way down to nothing. It's not quite like this. I don't think it's got this many original rivets in it like the Hellcat does, but it took it all the way down just to make sure everything is straight, and it's got all new spars in it.
How close to you to having it restored?
Well, it flew once. Stu flew the airplane, and we had a mechanical issue with it. Yeah, I liked watching it, and I was sitting in it getting ready to go fly it when they pulled the oil screen and found some debris in the screen, and we elected not to fly it. So, I mean, I really would like to fly a Bearcat, and I was about that close when they pulled me out of it. And I was like, man, that just ain't right. I don't know what to do.
These all being Navy carrier-based planes, I don't see tail hooks on either of them. Did they have tail hooks?
I can speak to the Hellcat. Yes, it has a tail hook, and if you go around the backside, you'll see it's retracted into the fuselage. It extends electrically out. Maybe we could do a little demonstration afterwards.
Yeah, g'day. I've been lucky enough to fly the TB Avenger in Australia and display it, and this looks like a small Avenger. Is it very similar to the Grumman Avenger to fly and to land?
Thankfully, no. To land, yeah, it's simple, but maneuverability-wise, they are, a battleship versus a PT boat. They're so different. I think. I don't like the TBM very much. It's really heavy on the controls. This is very light. It feels like what a fighter should feel like, I think.
Well, I was a bomber pilot in World War II, flying B-17s. Did 25 missions over Germany. And I'd just like to point out the vast difference between fighter pilots and bomber pilots. And I'd like for you to address, if you would, something about the armament on these two Navy fighters, which of course were from another theater of operations. But it appears that the Hellcat carried nothing but the 650 caliber machine guns. But the Bearcat apparently was a fighter/bomber. Is that not correct?
No.
Because you apparently had some shackles on the outside, on the wings that could carry external bombs, or were those fuel tanks?
I don't think they had any bombers like that. Now, they did carry a fuel tank when they were trying to go somewhere because they don't have much internal fuel. But I don't know of any that were bombers.
Its design role was an interceptor, and it was great for that. I think in Vietnam they tried to make it close air support, and it did not do very well at all because that's not what it was designed for. Yeah, the Hellcat really is designed as an air-to-air aircraft. It's got, as you say, the 650 caliber machine guns, so same as a Mustang versus the 20 millimeter cannons that came along later. You look at the Hellcats, they did drop some bombs. That's really not what it was designed for. The Hellcat, the carriers with the Hellcat, they were going to go through, press ahead, and destroy the Japanese Navy. That was their role. And they had SPDs or later TBFs, TBMs, and Helldivers on those carriers to do the bombing role. And then later Corsairs, they were doing more air-to-ground work, but the Hellcat, it was designed to be up higher.
My name's Robert Roth, and I just want to say I'm named after my grandpa who flew a Hellcat. My father, George Roth, is office manager for Warbird Security. Just want to say it's a special week for everybody, but a little bit more special for me. So thanks again for the efforts to get it here.
The lady with the beautiful lady with the straw hat's got it.
This was for Warren. When your airplane is fixed, completed, and ready to go, where can people see yours?
Hopefully in the sky, but
That's a good answer.
it'll be at the Dakota Territorial Air Museum in Minot, North Dakota. Thank you.
Okay, by the way, at the end of the Q&A, the little lady with the pretty hat, she's going to have a little basket, and she's got challenge coins. For you people that don't know what a challenge coin is, the military people, they come up and ask for the coin. They know you have it, and if you don't have it, you have to buy them a beer. So that's what the challenge coins are for, and they're donated by the Fighters World War II Museum. That's Fagen Fighters Museum, excuse me, in Granite Falls, Minnesota.
The Fagen Fighters World War II Museum doesn't just tell the story of what happened. It is dedicated to preserving the stories of those who lived it, telling us how it happened. Veterans and others are invited to the museum to share their stories firsthand. Their stories are recorded and preserved through the museum's Voices of Valor program.
Let's do our museum around my father, Ray Fagen, and his World War II experiences. First campaign medal he got was Normandy invasion. The second campaign medal he got was Liberation of Paris. And the third campaign medal he got was the Battle of the Bulge. You can't imagine how terrible it was.
We decided to make our collection a real museum when people refer to it as such. We opened the museum doors directly after our air show in 2012, so the date was June 17th, 2012.
The Fagen Fighters World War II Museum puts its collection in context for visitors by using original murals, sculptures, paintings, photographic collections, and other fine art to tell the story of epic events such as D-Day, June 6, 1944. This rail car, which anchors the museum's Holocaust exhibit, was found after years of searching in Germany and brought here so that no generation will ever forget the horror of the Holocaust or the memories of those who were lost.
Are survivors. And for years, they've been most important teachers. Sadly, as historians never live to say, the tyranny of biology is getting fewer and fewer survivors to speak. Memorials, and that's almost too sad, but opportunities to learn, like this exhibit, which opens people's eyes to the importance of the Holocaust that becoming ever more important.
They have visited the museum a number of times, were very helpful in our Holocaust exhibit. We were building that at Split Rock Studios. We are thrilled to be the recipient of their community award.
It makes me feel super proud to have been inducted into like the 2%, and I'm hoping to only make it grow to encourage others to come and join the program. When someone says Tuskegee Airmen, my first thought goes to, this is a very big legacy that I want to continue the excellence by breaking boundaries in the aerospace industry, not only as a female, but an African-American female.
We have to decide if we'll be known as the birthplace of the aircraft. And a friend of mine challenged me and said, you can't keep this idea to yourself. It's, you need to create it. There are lifetime friendships created out of the flights. It changes their lives. I've never met a finer group of people. There's not a one of them that has this feeling sorry for themselves, or they don't have a chip on their shoulder about their condition in life, and they're